Now, in this pen here, we have Rusty the rooster and 3 hens, Henny, Penny, and Jenny, and they live together as a group of breeders, just as they would on the farm. A hen will be 6 months old before she will start to lay eggs, and it takes about 24 hours for that egg to develop inside her body. And it all happens like this. It's very, very fascinating. In the hen's body is a cluster of teeny tiny little yolks. It's up near the back in the chicken. So a little yolk is released. It starts to travel through the hen's body. As it travels, it gets bigger, up to size, the white forms around it, and then there's the membrane, and then the last thing to develop is the shell. As soon as the shell is around it, there's a message that goes to the hen's brain, and it tells her, come on, my dear, it's time to get to the nesting box. So here are the nesting boxes. The hen climbs in there, she settles down, she's very quiet, and you know what? The other chickens never bother a hen when she's sitting in her nesting box. So she'll lay her egg. The egg rolls down out of the nesting box into this catch trough here, and that's where it stays, keeping safe and clean. And then the farmer will come into the barn a couple of times a day to gather up the hatching eggs and get them ready to go to the hatchery. Now these eggs, they're fertilized eggs. They can go in the incubator and you'll get some more chicks. The eggs that you buy at the store, they will never be able to have a chick grow inside them, because in the table egg industry, hens and roosters do not live together for the table eggs to come to the store. So lots of people have tried it, and that's why the eggs are not fertilized, so you'll never get a chick that way. At the hatchery, they go into the incubator. That's for 21 days at 35 degrees, a very science-based process and program of hatching eggs in the incubator. On day 21, that chick is ready to get out of the egg. He will use the egg tooth on the side of his beak. He starts pecking a hole. That's called pipping, making that hole bigger and bigger until he can finally just lift up his wings, give a little wiggle, and the shell bursts apart. The chick is hatched. Now, when he first hatches, we don't think that he's very cute because he's kind of wet and gooey. So we call him a green chick. He stays in the hatching room. The warm air in there dries him off and fluffs him up, and they start getting ready to go to the farm. So while the chicks are at the hatchery getting ready to make their trip to the farm, the farmer's got a job to take care of. As soon as we ship birds out of the barn, we go in the next morning with a skid steer or a small tractor to clean out all the manure and all the sawdust. Then we go in with a backpack blower to blow out all the dust. We follow that with a hot water power washer. We wash all the equipment and we wash the walls, getting the barn spick and span clean. Next comes the fogger that we fill with disinfectant, because we want this fog of disinfectant to be circulated around the barn by the fans, and it's all about getting rid of germs. So the disinfectant goes into all the cracks and all around the equipment. A farmer works hard at this part, because we all believe that if we keep germs out of the barn, that's the best way to keep our chickens healthy. So we put a lot of time into that one. Next, it's time to bring in some fresh sawdust. Put in the sawdust, put the feed pans down on the floor so the chicks can jump in and out of the feed pans. Put the water line at the right height, perfect for their beaks. We put rows of paper down the barn and load the paper up with feed so that when the chicks come, it's all ready for them. Of course, the barn is heated up right to 32 degrees Celsius. That's the comfort level for new chicks. That's what they have to be at. So the chicks travel to the farm in an environmentally controlled hatchery truck, keeps them in perfect condition, the right temperature, the right amount of humidity and air going through the back of the truck. They come to the farm, we wheel them in, lunch is served. We put the chickens right on top of the feed. They start eating. They notice the shiny water line. They go over and have a drink. And of course, it's warm and cozy and it's perfectly clean. So a farmer will go into his barn 3 or 4 times a day when he's got chicks at this age, and it's all about checking. He's looking to see that they're eating, drinking, sleeping. Some will be playing around, or actually lots will be playing around, and they'll be making their peeping sound. When he sees those 5 things happening, he knows his chicks are off to a good start in this lovely, clean, and warm and cozy environment. In this barn here, we have the broilers. These broilers are 6 weeks old. We often refer to them as the teenagers. You'll notice that they have lots of feathers on them. They're well covered, so we don't need any supplemental heat in the barn at this age. But we do have to pay a lot of attention to ventilation, taking out the hot, stale air and bringing in fresh air, so it's all controlled by the computer program that the farmer has put into his barn. And even in the summertime when it's very hot outside, the cooling program is fired up and it brings in more fresh air. Some barns have a misting system that lets moisture in the form of a very fine mist be drawn across the barn. The chickens don't get wet, but it cools the air and keeps the temperature down at comfort level. The feed pans are off the floor. The water line is at the right spot. And if you look at the picture on the back wall there, you'll see that those chickens have lots of space. The floor is clean and dry. They're very convenient to get to the feed pans and the water lines. There's the fans hanging from the ceiling that circulates the air around them. And then those yellow boxes that are up near the top, that's where all the fresh air comes in, all controlled by the computer. The farmer goes into his barn several times a day, and that's mostly to check, to make sure that the feed pans have feed in them. The water line, you can see the little blue ball floating in the stand pipe. That indicates that there's water down the water line, and he's making sure that there aren't any leaks, because we don't want wet bedding. And so he's walking, looking at the equipment, and of course observing the birds to make sure that they're happy and comfortable too. Canadian farmers keep their chickens healthy and safe at all times. We keep them locked in the barn, free run on the floor. We have a generator that if the power goes off, the generator starts up and the lights and the motors are all running again in only 3 seconds. The chickens barely know what has happened. We have an alarm system in case there's a problem with the heat, and the computer registers that it's either gone too high or it's gone too low. The computer sets the alarm off. We can hear the howler, we get phoned by the alarm company, and someone just gets over there very quickly to take care of what the problem is. And we never go away from the farm without having somebody close by that they can go in and take care of this emergency and get it fixed up right away for these chickens. Now, here's a very important one. A lot of people talk about this. No hormones or steroids in Canadian poultry feed, and that's by law since 1963. Now, of course, hormones and steroids are chemicals that can be fed to living creatures to have them grow bigger faster. Well, a lot of people think, oh, you must do that with your chickens. Nope, our chickens grow so strong and healthy because of the science involved in the industry and how the farmer takes care of them. We keep the germs away from them, so of course they stay in very fine health. So no hormones and steroids in Canada. We have lots of programs we have to follow in Canada. Canadians are always concerned about animal care. So we have an animal care program filled with regulations about how we have to provide for our birds and how they have to live. We have a biosecurity program all about the rules about keeping germs out of the barn. And you know, when we're working our barn, we have to change our boots when we go from floor to floor. And that's all about not transmitting any germs or any diseases throughout the barn. We don't let visitors in our barn, and I certainly don't take my dog in the barn. And it's all about the chickens' health and welfare. We have people who come around every year. They're called auditors. They check our barn, make sure the equipment's all working properly. They check all our records. They walk around the barn. They observe the birds. And of course, check all the paperwork. And we have to have everything in order. We have to have a water test. And so we have to meet all these requirements so we get our certificate so we can keep on chicken farming.